About the world. All right, let's talk about one of our topics is the race that's going the elections going on today.
Yeah.
And it all figures in. We talk about the Supreme Court, but it all figures in one way or the other. We'll just to concentrate a moment or two. It's unusual to have a race, a governor's race, at this particular time before the midterms to take on as much importance as this one. But when you're watching it, it's fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I'm sure you agree. I mean, the school education issue has just really animated that race. And I agree. I think it's been interesting to watch. It's kind of a catalyst to see all of this frustration with what's going on in our education system kind of get channeled into one place in that gubernatorial race. Yeah.
You guys have handled people as far as before in the organization as far as lawsuits, but I mean there's a lot of things going on like that.
There are.
Freedom of speech now is being suppressed more than ever.
Yes, completely true. Freedom of speech is under attack. You know, equality before the law is under attack. I mean, now we've got to go with things like equity, which are just, the complete opposite of equality before the law. Really, I feel like in a lot of ways, our entire liberal order, and when I say liberal, I mean small L liberal, but pluralism and Western democracy and our entire liberal order are really kind of under attack by people who have decided that all the founding of our country really was not good. And it's resulted in all of these horrible things, and so we need to tear it down at the root. That's what a lot of these people are really after.
But then you have to ask this question, and I understand what you're talking about, but you go back 200 more years, or even if you want to go back before the founding in 1776, and you say, all right, this was bad, and then you try to explain, but that's how things were done there.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to step up, and there was no buses for Rosa Park to get on.
Yeah.
So that was the way it was then, but then again, if that's the truth, and it is the truth, then why not celebrate how far we've come? And at what point do you say, okay, we're gonna pencil in utopia at 2025?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. There's this problem of judging the past by today's lens, which keeps cropping up and is just unfair. But beyond that, just like you said, what's so great about America is even with all the warts of that era that were imported into America, just like the rest of the world, just like you said, what's different about us is that we enshrined ideals into our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution that, did we always live up to them? No, of course we didn't always live up to them, and we still don't always live up to them. But we put those ideals in place and started striving towards them, which made us...
From day one.
Yeah. And so that it's something to celebrate, just like you said.
I've often said in any other country when you start thinking about this, and we have an unusual country because we're not all Chinese in China. We brought people from all over the world, and the good and the bad, but that's where we are now, the greatest country in the world. And I've often said, without this Constitution, and the Constitution when it was written, it made it very difficult for slavery to continue.
Yes.
And we ought to celebrate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. And there's you can look back at the historical record and see that the framers of the Constitution, they understood that. They understood that we can't solve this today, but we can put in place structures in our Constitution that inevitably will take care of this. And that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah, and the environment as it existed at that particular time, they could not go forward with any unity at all unless they conquered that one way or the other.
And you have to remember, too, at the time, especially if you go back to the Declaration, these colonies were trying to first take care of the first most important issue, which was to defeat England, and they needed to be united for that. They couldn't take on a divisive issue like slavery right then. But like I said, in the Declaration, they made it clear that was not something that was going to stick around in America either.
Don't know how we got off on that one, but it is an interesting subject. Another legal matter, in sense, and let me just say this as director of Mississippi Justice Institute, you come to them from a military background, you come to them from a legal background. Where'd you get your legal expertise?
Went to Ole Miss Law School.
And that was enough.
Yeah.
That was enough.
That was enough. Yeah, I went to Mississippi State for my undergraduate degree and then to Ole Miss Law School.
Well, I have a couple of cuts here. This is not where we were going to go.
Okay.
It never is. I always throw some things at you. But we've got to take care of this. This is, I call it cop-outs. And I've got it listed in the archives, and there must be 15 cuts here. But I want your thoughts on this because it is overwhelming on memes today in the social media.
Leaving right now.
No, I'm doing a report because I don't know what you are or what you're doing.
If I don't give you my driver's license, what's going to happen?
Okay, listen, sir.
I asked you a simple question.
To you,
and I've told you that. I've told you,
person
listen.
Who is causing a disturbance at a
The ambulance is constantly
hospital.
Running the stop sign.
Private hospital.
The ambulance is running the stop
all
sign.
I know, you
I'm
could be
filming
stalking.
that.
I don't know you. Okay, I don't know if that's the truth.
Yeah,
you might be stalking or harassing an employee or a patron at the hospital.
I'm not.
So
My
I'm going
name
to be doing a report.
Officer, my name is
So
Jeff.
that if something
I work
comes
for
up,
Connect News Services.
I can go ahead and roll you out.
And
Provide me with your driver's license.
I don't have my driver's license on me.
Okay.
My name is Jeff.
I've asked you several times to step in front of my car.
Here's a guy filming outside a hospital, and in this world of post 9/11,
Yeah.
cops are coming up and saying that you can't be filming here, and he knows that I can be filming here.
Yeah.
I'm on public ground.
Yeah.
But you have all of these things where apparently we are not training our officers enough.
Yeah.
Here's in a courthouse.
Hey, how are you?
What can we do for you today?
Nothing. I'm just exercising my First Amendment right.
Okay. Are you here for official business?
Yes, sir.
What's your official business?
I was in the town clerk, and I also now have to see the law department.
Okay.
Yeah,
You
so-
know the law department?
No, didn't go up to the law department
Let's
yet.
go see him. Let's go see him. Who you want to see there? Who you
So
have one with?
why do you have to escort me over there? This is a public building, is it not,
Don't
Sergeant?
stop nonsense, please, okay? I'm very busy, man. I ain't time for your nonsense, okay?
Sir, if
Here-
you're very busy, why are you here?
I'm
Why are you here
because they said we
interacting
got
with
an intruder in the
me?
building.
This is a public building. How
I know
could I
you're recording, I'm
intrude?
recording you also, okay?
I understand that.
Mr.
How
Captain,
can
Mr.
I
Captain,
intrude
It
in a public
escalates.
I'm busy.
building?
What can we do for you?
Sir, I would ask that you use a little bit of de-escalation.
I'm not.
Can I get your name?
I'll give you my card. You first. If you're here for a reason, go do your business. Go ahead. Don't try to.
But sir, if you're so busy, just quite frankly, you should go back to work and do what you need to do.
This is part of my job. Responding to
It
calls.
shouldn't be, sir. That is suspicious.
I'm not going to play the whole thing, but this is another. And one more quickly. This is filming in front of a prison.
How are you guys doing today?
They
You
won't
guys have
talk.
any identification? Excuse me, come back here. Come back here.
They
being
start
detained?
walking away.
Or
Do
free
you
to
guys
go?
have any identification?
Are we being detained or are we free to go?
Do you have any identification?
Are we being detained or are we free to go?
Right now, I would like to see some identification.
I would I deny that request. Are we being detained or are we free to go?
What are you doing on our property?
Are we being detained or are we free to go?
I would like to see some identification first.
Are we being detained right now?
Yes.
For what? Crime.
Not a crime.
Okay, for what then?
Reasonable suspicion.
That's not reason to detain someone. What's the reasonable suspicion?
I'm having contact with you.
Okay.
No crime. Just suspicious activity.
What crime is this? Is it a misdemeanor or a felony?
What?
Is it a misdemeanor or a felony? Gross
No, just
misdemeanor?
suspicious activity right now.
All right.
So do you have any identification on you? Do you have any identification on you?
And they went silent. My point on this, and I want to talk about when we come back, we've got to find some bridge in here somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere where we don't violate the Constitution,
Yeah.
but a police officer is tasked when you see something suspicious or somebody calls and says somebody's out there filming.
Yeah.
See, the very least is the identification itself. I have no idea where we go with this, but
Yeah.
it is rampant. It is viral across this
Yeah,
country.
you definitely see a lot of these kind of videos.
As an attorney, and most of the time these things escalate.
Yeah.
And what I think these people are hoping it will escalate to come to a lawyer, find a lawyer, and go sue the city.
Yeah.
And the taxpayer is going to have to pay $75,000 or $750,000,
Yeah.
whatever it happens to be. So your expertise on this when we come back, and then we'll jump into the Supreme Court.
Sounds good.
You got it. Back with Aaron Ryan. We carried on a good conversation off the air, but just to repeat your thoughts on it on the air.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can tell from those clips that the officer is kind of in a little bit of a gray area in each of these situations because, under the Fourth Amendment, in order to detain someone, that's a seizure under the Fourth Amendment, and you have to have probable cause to do that. And so the officer may not have any kind of articulatable suspicion of actual criminal activity, but he sees something that's got his attention. He wants to investigate, and he's just investigating, and he's kind of hoping for voluntary compliance from whoever he's approached is what's happening. And that person obviously is not giving him that voluntary compliance. And so I think, I said this off there, I think it kind of speaks to a larger issue, which is just the erosion of trust and respect for law enforcement in general. In a day gone by, an officer may have been able to operate in that gray area a lot more easily and just approach someone and ask some questions just to satisfy the officer that nothing was going on. Yeah. But today you may run more into these situations where somebody's going to hold them to the letter of the law and say, nope, I'm not doing anything. If you want to detain me, go right ahead. But otherwise, I'm going to walk.
Well, these people are very smart because they know what the sensitive spots are, whether it's in front of a prison, they find a public sidewalk or something in front of the prison. They have all the rights in the world, and they know their rights.
Yeah, yeah.
Or in a courtroom, they know their rights, or in a public park or wherever it happens to be. Then they incorporate the use of a camera, whether it's their smart device or a actual camera. And then in the world, as I said before, of post 9/11, we're all trained, if we see something, say something. We don't know if you're mapping out a building or something.
Yeah.
And the key word there, because you're a lawyer, you know it, and they know it, and apparently some of the police officers don't know it. Key word is articulable suspicion.
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing is, technically they do, if they're actually going to physically detain the person and keep them there against their will to continue asking questions, they would need to have that articulatable suspicion. But at the same time, it's not illegal for an officer to just walk up and have a conversation with somebody. And that's really what they're trying to do. And that's why you kind of see them evade the question of, am I being detained? They don't want to, answer that.
I would think one of the things that I wish we would do is for the sheriff's associations, the police department, police chiefs association, the state legislatures, all the appropriate committees come by and have some type of standardization when you're in Mississippi, whether you're in a Hinds County zone or a Biloxi or the Harrison County.
Yeah.
No matter where you are in the state, then whether you have to show it or not, what are the rules? And we do this on the Miranda.
Yeah.
We have when somebody stopped, we even if you have to take the card out, here it is.
Yeah.
You know your rights, and I've given you my rights according to the laws of the state of Mississippi in accordance with the Supreme Court of the United States of America, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Speaking of which is the Supreme Court. Where is this going to go?
Well, you're talking about Texas.
Let's talk about Texas first of all, because the proceedings began yesterday. What's the update on that?
Well, so they had oral argument in two related cases on the Texas law, and I'm sure your listeners are probably familiar, but as a refresher, Texas passed a law that essentially outlawed abortions after 6 weeks, excuse me, which is, does not comport with Roe v. Wade, which set the line at viability, which right now is around 16 weeks. And so that's, kind of a direct frontal challenge to Roe, but not really a direct frontal challenge to Roe in a way, because what the Texas legislature did was then, and look, this is complicated, Paul, and we can get into as much of the weeds as we want, and I can try to simplify it as much as we want, but the Texas legislature essentially tried to make it impossible to challenge this law in federal court. And so challenges would have to go through the state court system. And there's arguments that even the way it's set up to go through the state court system is designed to, favor people who would be enforcing the Texas law. And then more importantly, though, no official in Texas is charged with enforcing that law. They kind of outsourced it to the general public and said, anybody can sue if a doctor or anybody else performs or abets an abortion, after this line, then anybody in the state of Texas can sue them and get $10,000 if they win, plus any actual damages. And so the important thing is there's no one that you can sue. There's no state official that you can sue and haul into federal court to defend the law, and so it makes it to where you can't challenge this in federal court.
Would a law professor akin this to a brilliant chess move by pro-life
It's
people?
A lot of strategery, for sure. It is a lot of strategery, and actually, it has never happened in the history of the United States. No state has tried to do this. Now, I'll tell you, Paul. As smart as it is, it's very concerning to me too, and to a lot of the conservative justices that heard the arguments, because you have to flip the script a little bit and say, well, what if we were talking about gun rights or free speech or religious liberty, and basically any state could follow this same roadmap and make it to where, say that state happens to be hostile to gun rights, and they say, well, anybody who owns a gun in the state of New York can be sued by anyone in New York, and oh, by the way, you can't challenge this in federal court to get federal judges who may be more inclined to enforce the federal Constitution. And so I like the way Mississippi is doing this, which is just a direct frontal attack on Roe, which is really where the problem lies. And the reason I'm concerned about the Texas model is again, as conservatives, we're the ones who really care about constitutional rights. There's this whole Roe kind of invented a right that did not exist. Mm-hmm. And, of course, many conservatives have a problem with that. But I would rather attack that one issue in court, just like we're doing in Mississippi, bringing it to the Supreme Court and making the argument directly to overturn Roe and Casey, than to kind of do this gamesmanship, which admittedly is very smart, but can be used, I think, against constitutional rights more than anything else. And so that's what concerns me about it.
And I know this is a tough question, but Aaron Rice is my guest director of Mississippi Justice Institute. Aaron, if it's for or against the people who brought this to court, how does that play in both ways to the December as far as Mississippi's concerned?
Yeah. I think, in all honesty, that if the Dobbs case, the Mississippi case, if the court, overturns Roe v. Wade, then everything happening in Texas.
Well, they wouldn't do this in the Texas thing.
No, it wouldn't necessarily happen in the Texas case.
But is a Texas decision going to be made before the?
I don't think so.
You don't?
And really, the reason I say that is because I think the U.S. Supreme Court would probably rather go ahead and address Dobbs, which would kind of make a lot of what's going on. Now, it depends on how the court rules, but if the court was going to alter Roe or overturn Roe, then it would really make a lot of what's going on in Texas moot.
So we won't get any inference or any ideas because
no, we will not, and it's frustrating, as a Supreme Court watcher. But the oral arguments in Texas were yesterday. The oral arguments in the Mississippi case, the Dobbs case, will be December 1st. The justices will meet shortly after those oral arguments. So in the Texas case, they may meet today or in the next few days, and they'll kind of have an initial vote right then and decide where each of them fall. And then if the Chief Justice is in the majority, he'll assign the opinion. If he's not in the majority, then the most senior member of the court would assign the opinion. But I'd say, we will be in a wait-and-see mode on both of these cases. We'll get to at least watch the Dobbs oral argument December 1st. But after that, we will just be waiting, and we will not get notice of when the Supreme Court is going to issue an opinion. And so we'll probably be looking at sometime in the summer before we would really
on the
find
Mississippi case.
On the Mississippi case and probably the Texas case, yeah.
What do you think the atmosphere is going to be like when this happens? This is December the what? 5th?
December 1st is the oral argument,
okay.
Yeah. I think the atmosphere will be very circus-like, which I think speaks to the argument that Mississippi is making in this case, which is that this is an issue for the people. This is an issue that should be decided through the democratic process. This is an issue that different states should be able to take different approaches to. And because the court has removed it from the sphere of the democratic process and made it untouchable by every other part of our government and kind of imposed it by fiat, you have these high tensions, high emotions, and kind of a war going on that's been going on for decades and decades now, and tensions are very high. And so I think the circus-like atmosphere that we'll probably see at the Supreme Court really is indicative of the fact that the court does need to go back and overturn Roe, because the court should have never tried to impose itself here.
You're going to have more pro-choicers there by far than you'll have pro-lifers. It just happens.
Either way, at the oral argument, they won't know who's going to prevail, and I think you'll see a lot of protests and but I've heard from pro-life Mississippians who are planning on going up to the Supreme Court and being there on the steps during the oral argument.
Didn't have a chance to ask you about medical marijuana. Aren't you glad?
Don't know that I have a lot to say on it.
All right, so we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And you've got several things working through the Institute that you can come back and talk to us when they materialize.
Yeah, absolutely. I always love to update you on those.
Director of Mississippi Justice Institute, the one and only Aaron Rice. Thank you, man. Always good. I appreciate you coming.